Alright guys, this is going to be a re-upload because on the last video I found that it had no sound, which was pretty annoying. But I'm glad there were some views and some people paid attention and liked it. Anyways, as you can see from the title of the PDF, this is exposing false timelines, which is all to show that the Middle Ages don't exist, as the title of this video states. So, as you can see, got quite a few tables here and a bit of commentary. So, just a quick rundown. First table, pretty self-explanatory, shows you the creation week from Genesis chapter 1 to chapter 2, verse 3. And there are 7 days in a week because God works 6 days, rest of the seventh day. That brings you to table 2, where you have a 7,000 year timeline from creation to the final judgment. Now, on table 3, the way we figured that out is because God told Adam that in the day he ate of the fruit, he would die. So Adam died 930 years from creation at 930 years old. Okay, so as you could see, comparing the verse column, tables 1, 2, and 3, he died in the day he ate of the fruit. Okay? Next, we have the death of Christ at 5,500 years from creation, and that is because Adam was created in the middle of day 6. Okay? At the beginning of day 6, the animals were created from the ground, and then Adam was made, and then at the end of day 6, Adam was given dominion over the animals and the world. Okay, so Adam being created in the middle of day 6 from the dust of the ground shows that Christ would die and rise from the dead. Okay? And then Adam ruling over the world and the animals is a sign of Christ ruling over the nations and the entire world for 1,000 years. Okay? So you got 5,500 plus 500 and then plus 1,000. That's how you get that. And then this number 5,500 is only validated in the Septuagint, okay? Which is the first official translation created during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus around 284 to 246 BC when he ruled. So as you can see in the first row, we have the days of creation. Row 2, we have the Anno Mundi dates. And then row 3, we have the Anno Domini dates. Okay? So you start here, 5470. Then you add 1,000 years. Okay, that's the end of day 1. Then you have the end of day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and that's the end of day 7. Okay? So the way we figured out this date, 5470 BC, is because Christ died 30 AD. This is the same as 5,500 from creation. So 30 AD minus 5,500 gives you the creation date of 5470 BC. Alright, and then we have tables for Rabbinic Judaism, the Samaritan Pentateuch, and the Masoretic text. So you'll notice one quick thing, that these chronologies, these last 3, tables 5 through 7, they're shorter than the Septuagint. Why is that? Well, based upon these first 7 tables, the only valid explanation for the shortened chronologies would be Christ fulfilling the prophecies of Moses and the prophets around AD 1 to 30. Tables 4, 6 through 7 show Christ living and dying between the beginning and middle of day 5 as prophesied, whereas table 5 shows Jesus living and dying in the middle of day 4, a clear sign that the rabbis didn't want Jesus to be the prophesied Messiah. Let me just show you guys that. So here, okay, Christ dies here in the middle of day 6, or the 6th millennium. Okay, you see that with the Septuagint, alright? But when you get to Samaritan Pentateuch and the Masoretic text, you see that he dies near the beginning of day 5, but it's still at the end of days. However, when you get to Rabbinic Judaism, you'll notice that they have Christ dying in the middle of day 4, or in the middle of the 7,000 years. So 7,000 divided by 2, 35. Okay. So it's clear that the rabbis understood exactly what I just pointed out. So instead of Jesus dying at the end of days as prophesied, they corrupted their own scriptures and showed him to have died in the middle of the age of the world instead of the end of days. Okay? So the implications is that the above tables show that the smaller your BC dates are from creation to Christ's birth, the larger your AD dates become from Christ's birth to present. Conversely, the larger your BC dates are, the smaller your AD dates become. So the Middle Ages had to be fabricated to make up for the discrepancies between the Septuagint date of creation against the Samaritan Pentateuch, Rabbinic Judaism, and the Masoretic text. So that's what I show here in Table 8, briefly. So we have the biblical texts in column 1, the creation dates, column 2, and the discrepancy of years in column 3. So what that really looks like visually is here. Alright, so as you could see, for the second row we have the Septuagint, third row we have the Masoretic text, and the fourth row we have Rabbinic Judaism. Alright, so as you could see, the longer the longer the number of years there are, the more years there are before the birth of Christ, the less years there are from his birth to the present day. Okay? But if you reverse that and you cut down the number of years before his birth, then you can actually extend the number of years from his birth onwards. Alright? So here's another visual. Here's the Septuagint. Here's the Masoretic text. And there's Rabbinic Judaism. So as you could see, you cannot fit the Middle Ages at all on the Septuagint timeline. You can fit it somewhat comfortably on the Masoretic text, but you could definitely fit it perfectly on the Rabbinic timeline. Alright. So as you could see, the timeline had to be artificially shortened. Now, um, before I go further, you might be wondering how I got this date for the Samaritan Pentateuch, the date of creation. Okay, I'll show you. So I went online, I found a free English copy of the Samaritan Pentateuch, and it's pretty easy to read because they only use the 5 books of Moses. So the only chronological years they have are from Genesis 5 and Genesis 11. So as you can see, from Adam to the flood, the Samaritan Pentateuch lists 1,307 years. And then from the flood to the birth of Abraham, they list 942 years. So, in other words, from Adam to the birth of Abraham, there's 2,249 years. The Septuagint, on the other hand, lists 2,242 years from Adam to the flood. And then, from the flood to the birth of Abraham, there are 1,172 years, for a total of 3,414 years. Subtract the 2249 from the Samaritan Pentateuch, you have a difference of 1,165 years. Okay? So you do 5470 BC, and then factor in that, and then you get the 4305 BC date of creation for the Samaritan Pentateuch. Now, to make sure this wasn't a fluke, I counted backwards from the death of Christ in 30 AD. So 483 years from his death to Cyrus, and then 70 years from Cyrus to the Babylonian captivity, 517 years from the Babylonian captivity to Saul, 511 years from Saul to the Exodus out of Egypt by Moses, and then from the Exodus out of Egypt to the 75th year of Abraham, when he went to Canaan, there are 430 years, and then from then to the flood, there are 1,247 years, and then from the flood to Adam, 2,242 years. So I did virtually the same thing for the Samaritan Pentateuch. Okay, and you see it brings you there. Now you'll notice there's a slight change in numbers. Originally, it was 942 from the flood to the birth of Abraham. But when you add his 75 years, that's where you get the 1017 from in the Samaritan Pentateuch. And then here is the Septuagint. Now when you add the 75 years, you have the 1247 from the flood to the 75th year of Abraham. And also, the same thing applies for the Masoretic text. Oops.
If anyone asks me, I put stuff on the hot stove. And then the one on West Korea. But. That's also midnight. Yeah, it's only it's early. I don't want to call now. 12:45.
So that explains all of that. Okay. However, when you do, as you could see, uh, none of those calculations bring you to the creation date for Rabbinic Judaism. That's because they have a completely different count. They actually end their count from the destruction of the Second Temple, and then they count 420 years back from its destruction to its dedication, and then 70 years from its dedication, the Second Temple's dedication, to the Babylonian captivity, and then 410 years, or not even from the Babylon captivity, but to the destruction of the First Temple. From the destruction of the First Temple to the building of the First Temple are 410 years in the fourth year of Solomon, and then from the fourth year of Solomon to the Exodus are 480 years, and then from the Exodus to the birth of Isaac are 400 years, and then from the birth of Isaac to the flood are 392 years, and from the flood to day 7 of creation, okay, brings you to 3758 BC. And that's because they count the years a little weird. So here Adam is a year old. So subtract, here Adam is born or created on day 6. Okay, he opens the year. Okay, and then they count days 1 through 5 as 1 year for whatever reason. So, anyways, that's how you get to the 3761 BC. It's through tradition, and it's not even through real biblical data. Okay? Now, as concerns the Middle Ages, the way you break that up here is I show in Table 9. So you break it up into 3 periods: the early, middle, and late period. Okay, so early period is AD 284 to 1000. Middle period is AD 1000 to 1300, and the late period is AD 1300 to 1500. All right. So what that tells us is that the modern age is from 1500 to 2000 AD. And our postmodern age is from AD 2000 to our present year, 2023, which is a 523-year time span. And when you reconcile the dates between the Septuagint against Rabbinic Judaism and the Masoretic texts, there's approximately 500 years from Christ's birth to our present day. So here on these last 2 tables, I demonstrate just that. Okay. So there's this well-known issue of 166 years missing from the timeline, okay, from Rabbinic Judaism, but also those same years are for the Septuagint as well. So as you can see, the Septuagint dates the Second Temple's destruction at 523 BC, whereas the secular date, which the Jews also use, is 586 BC. It's a 103-year discrepancy. Now, the actual rabbis, okay, they date the destruction of the Second Temple at 420 BC. Okay, so that's a 63-year discrepancy between the rabbinic date and the Septuagint date. Okay, altogether, that's 166 years. So table 11, okay, as you can see here, this is how I break it down. All right. So between 5470 and 3761, that's where you get the 1,709 years. Okay? Then you take out the 166 years from that. That gives you the 1543. So 2023 minus 1543, that's 483 years. Add that to the 30 years of Christ, brings you to our current date. Conversely, if you do 1709 minus 196, 1709 minus 196 gives you 1513. So 2023 minus 1513, again, brings you to our current date. All right, another way to check this is when you do 2023 minus the, let's say we do it this way. Add the 166 years, okay? And then minus 1709, okay, brings us to 480. Or, sorry, another way to do this. So, let's say we eliminate the whole period of the Middle Ages. So from 284 to 1500, right? That's 1,216 years. So 2023 minus 1,216, okay, gives you 807. But clearly, that means we should already be halfway through the millennial reign, according to the Septuagint reckoning, okay? But clearly, we're not in the millennial reign, so we have to deduct 277 years, okay? Christ hasn't, it's not, the millennial reign hasn't begun, so we subtract 3.5 years, okay? We're not in the Great Tribulation, subtract another 3.5. The third temple is only being talked about being built. It hasn't even been completed. And historically speaking, it took the Israelites 7 years to build both temples. And then I've been keeping track of all of this and studying it for the last 7 years. Okay? Gives you 509. Alright? Again, our current year. Let's go take this 480. Okay? So, again, I'm 35, so I've kept track of it the last 7 years. So, we add 28 years to the 480. Boom. Again. So, we're being brought to the current date that I showed you guys. Okay? Anyways, so that's it for this presentation on this video. I think this is pretty solid proof that the Middle Ages were definitely fabricated. But for those of you who still wish to hold on to the Masoretic text or Samaritan Pentateuch or Rabbinic Judaism, let me show you why that's going to be a problem. Okay, so as you can see here, the 3 pyramids were built from between 2550 to 2490 BC. So if you keep the Masoretic date of 4004 BC, okay, from Adam to the flood brings you to 2348 BC. That means that the pyramids were built before the flood and the Egyptians existed before the Tower of Babel, which would invalidate the Word of God. But clearly, when you look at the pyramids, there are no signs of water damage to the internal or external part of the structure. So that means either a flood didn't happen, or um, the pyramids were built after the flood. Okay? Here's another problem. So Babylon is founded around 2300 BC. Again, (2348) minus 2300, that only allows 48 years. Okay, for what, 10 generations to be born, and then the whole city of Babylon or nation of Babylon to be founded? That's impossible. It's ridiculous. Not to mention, uh, if you follow the Samaritan Pentateuch, there's 131 years from the flood to the building of the Tower of Babel. So there's a huge contradiction. But, anyways, I think I've made a pretty convincing case for the non existence of the Middle Ages and how it actually came about as a fraudulent cover up to make up for the discrepancy of years between the dates of creation from the Septuagint and the shorter chronologies of the Masoretic texts, Samaritan Pentateuch, and Rabbinic Judaism. But ultimately, this was to have the saints not ready for the return of Christ. And this is all a huge war being carried out by the enemy. So that is it. I will leave a link to this and the other charts that I showed in the description box. Otherwise, you can also request by emailing me.